Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Mike Friesen. With us for our program, Assemblyman Mike Fitzpatrick. Mike Fitzpatrick represents parts of Suffolk County, the 8th Assembly District. Thank you folks for watching. Mike Fitzpatrick, here we are at the state capitol. The two of us were looking at today's edition right here, New York Post.
New York Post.
New York Post. Derek Jeter just put into Monument Park out in the center field of Yankee Stadium. That was a big day. But inside,
Lo and behold, page two.
Page two, you open it up,
One of our
and
favorite topics.
I
Pension
thought
pork.
of you. Yeah, that's right.
Pension pork.
Porkapalooza is one of the
Porkapalooza. That's
one of the words they use there.
Well, it's as we come to the end of session, Mike. Guess what? The pension sweetener bills are quietly submitted.
You have been.
Thankfully, the New York Post keeps an eye on these things for the general public.
You've been of a mind that it is the public pension system that kind of drives everything that goes on in terms of state government.
The defined benefit pension. Pensions are good. You know, I'm not anti-pension. I'm in the pension system myself, as are you. But I have always advocated and have carried legislation and tried to get some support that all elected officials, from governor, to the county level, state level, town level, all elected officials, and all non-civil service appointed, the political appointees, should not be in the defined benefit system. They should be in the defined contribution platform that is offered to SUNY instructional staff.
Where people make their own
They contribute themselves.
contributions.
There is an employer contribution, but it is much less expensive than the traditional defined benefit. We are on an unsustainable path with that. It gets no attention because my colleagues will not talk about it.
Because they're in it.
Because they're in it,
And
it makes the unions get a little testy. The unions are in it too, and when you think about it for a second, I mean, Suffolk County, we passed two bills here in Albany that I fought that allow municipalities to borrow to make their required actuarial payments. Suffolk County borrows $350 million to meet what they're required to pay actuarially. What does that tell you? That tells you that the rate of growth in these labor contracts is unsustainable because it's driving your cost up very quickly, far ahead of your own tax base's ability to sustain these payments. People are living longer, well into their 80s, even into their 90s, and even people are going to be living into their hundreds. 100 to 100 very soon. It's already happening, which means you're paying for these people for a longer period of time. And when you look at a contract such as Suffolk County's police contract, which is due to expire next year. Now again, we love our police, but on the financial issues, I part company with them because they have used their power as a union to intimidate and to force county legislators, county executives, and state legislators to structure labor law to give them this advantage. And then, and they go, did we do that? Yes, they did. But we have an agreement that County Executive Steve Ballone signed almost 4 years ago that expires next year, and it is backloaded. The county executive has no way to pay out of current revenue the accumulated sick and vacation time. And one of the things they negotiate for is the number of days off. They have so many days off, they can't use them all. So the contract allows them to bank them to be paid out at the highest level of pay when they retire. There are going to be, I am told, at least 6 members of the Suffolk PD who are going to get checks for $500,000.
Wow.
That's a check on top of the pension, which, because the overtime is pensionable, is also run up in the last 3 years. So these are all things that are negotiated in contracts, and we are paying the price for it, and we can't afford it. And
now, based on what you're saying right now, there's going to be people watching this show that are going to be angry at you for bringing it up, talking about it publicly.
And there are some that are always angry with me because I talk about this issue because
Right,
they don't want it discussed.
That's just it. And so that's one reason why other elected officials don't want to talk about it, because they don't want to get in Dutch with the police departments or the unions or whatever.
And look, look, I have an uncle who was a late uncle who was a state trooper. My mom's second husband was, her second husband was retired Nassau inspector, and you know, my voting record on law and order issues is stellar. But on the financial issues, I part company with my friends in the union. I said, look, what we need is balance, and we don't have that. The strength of their union keeps the scale depressed in their favor, and financially it is ruining us. The same thing with teacher contracts. You know, State United Teachers operates very much the same way. They're the biggest union in the state. And it's about keeping money flowing to districts so that their compensation costs, which are 70% of a district's budget, never changes. This needs to change, and it starts in Albany, and we need to make some changes. And the way you change that, look, you know, and we have, you know, there is legislation in to do this sort of thing, but it never sees the light of day because of the influence and the power of the unions. There's no equilibrium here at all, and this is why companies leave, why people are leaving, why, you know, your tax base. I mean, you know, I remember when I first bought my house, my tax bill was under $4,000, and I'm at $9,000 now.
And the rhetoric is easy. If you're a police union, it's they put their lives on the line every day. If you're
we respect that.
If you're the teachers union, what's more important than the people who are teaching our children? I mean, the rhetoric is easy.
But what but
the numbers are not easy.
Everybody
right?
understands that, and everybody agrees with that, Mike.
Yeah, that's right.
The difference is when the unions, all right, not the individual cops or the individual teachers, but their unions who act on their behalf, whose job it is to get them, you know, the best contract, the best benefits, the easiest work rules as possible. And how do they do that? Well, you know, over and above the union dues that, say, Suffolk County Police pay, and a number of other unions, police unions, they pay $1 a day, $14 a pay period goes into their super PAC. And that super PAC is, I was the recipient of $266,000 worth of very negative advertising because of my legislation that I've put in to try and control these costs, slow them down, all right? Not taking anything away from them, but to slow them down. And then you pick up today's New York Post and you see how at the end of session, legislators put in pension sweetener bills. Some of them may pass, most of them I hope do not, but they come out in the dark of night at the end of session, and I will be voting no on every single one of them. We are drowning in taxes. We are drowning in the cost of local government and state government. The pension system is no longer sustainable. It must be for new hires. And I know with the Constitutional Convention coming up, the unions are in overdrive. Vote no, because they fear possible proposals to change, make changes to the pension system. You can do it that way, or you can do it legislatively. Either way, you can change this. But I believe that we need to, at the very least, two things need to happen. One, every elected official, and I've spoken to the governor about this, and he kind of poo-poos it. He says, oh, they'll never go for it. And I said, well, Governor, I said, they weren't going to go for a 2% tax cap until you put the power of your office behind it. But we could easily change the pension system going forward, not taking anything away from them, from any of us, but going forward. You're capped and closed in the defined benefit system, and starting tomorrow, you're in the same system that they use at SUNY. It's fair, it's equitable, it's less expensive for the taxpayer.
Just like what they do with public employee unions, new tiers, the benefits change.
Correct. Yeah, we've gone from tier 1 to tier 6,
right.
Because you have to change it because you have to adjust for economic reality that you can't sustain this anymore.
And that's what you're talking about.
And going forward, new hires have to go into a defined contribution platform. If 70% of public employees who teach at the state university are happy with their program, then why isn't it, is it not good enough for K-12 teachers or CSEA members or anybody else? In order to, because if we don't change this, Mike, the fact that Suffolk County alone is borrowing $350 million to just meet its required payments, and you have a tax base that is not growing fast enough to keep up with it, and then throw healthcare costs on top, which is a huge mess. The cost of OPEBs, other post-employment benefits, retiree health costs, and others. These are you're putting more and more weight on the back of your economy, which you'd like to think is a thoroughbred racehorse, but right now the jockey weighs about 600 pounds. And what happens is people vote with their feet, as they increasingly raise taxes, put casinos where they're not wanted to pay off these pensions, raise fees to exorbitant levels, all to avoid raising taxes, but all more importantly, even more to avoid having the conversation with your public employee unions about restructuring some of these cost drivers so that if they are sustainable, that your economy can cover their costs so that people can afford to live here and grow here. More importantly, grow. We have no incentive to grow this economy here because people look at Long Island and specifically, Suffolk County and Nassau County, and they say, why would I grow? Why would I put my business here? When you look at the tax burden, not just, and then you look where my employees look at the tax burden they have to deal with, the property tax burden. Now the governor is attempting through this mandated shared services, and I hope it succeeds. And there will be some realized savings from this program. But my concern is that you're going to see a savings of nickels where we need to save dollars. And the dollars are in the labor-oriented costs, the compensation costs. That's where the dollars are. That has to be restructured to bring it more into a realistic structure so that, just like the private sector has had to deal with globalization, increased competition,
adaptation,
adapt and become more efficient. Government has never felt that kind of pressure. It needs to. And what will happen in Suffolk County is what eventually happened in places like Detroit. Government can't go out of business. But if you think the fact that government can't go out of business means, my pension payments are secure,
everything's fine, right?
You're dead wrong, because what happened in Detroit,
look at Detroit, Michigan,
the tax base evaporated. Mm-hmm. It went away.
It's a ghost town.
It's a ghost town.
Yeah.
So the public retirees in the city of Detroit willfully agreed to a 9% cut in benefits because they feared an even deeper cut by a bankruptcy judge. So when you look at these problems, and people who are paying attention, and I'm going to assume a lot of people are, if you read Newsday, watch Channel 12, the other news outlets.
The New York Post?
New York Post. If you're following this, you know that local elected officials, your county legislators, your county executive, are scrambling for new sources of revenue. New sources of revenue. And then you hear the fair share, the most malleable term in public finance. Right. Whenever you want more money from something, you accuse them of not paying their fair share. It's baloney. I mean, the top 1% already pay 40% of the tax burden. I mean, come on. Right. But if you're not making your community, your tax base attractive, your community attractive to employers, then you will not have a healthy public sector. And that's what we have now, a very unhealthy public sector.
And now nothing spells that out more than what you said to start this program off, that so many communities are borrowing in order to pay off their actuarial costs.
Correct.
And folks, put that in terms of your own household. If you are borrowing a lot of money in order to pay for the things that you need to live and to survive and to plan for the future, there's something wrong with that, and that's going to be a bad solution to a problem.
I've had 3 proposals out there, Mike, that
20 seconds.
20 seconds. 2% hard cap on binding arbitration. When the average police officer is making over $150,000 and detectives and superior officers are at $237 base pay, a 2% cap is still a decent raise if you go to binding arbitration. 2, new hires, except for police and fire, have to go into a defined contribution platform, the one they use at SUNY. It works. 3, Triborough, the third rail. When a contract expires, automatic steps need to be suspended for the length of time there's no contract. Taxpayers need a chance to breathe. This gives them a chance to breathe.
We're out of time. Thank you, folks. See you for our next Assembly Calendar.